You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody, it's James. Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. Today, I have a great guest for you guys. What's super funny is I didn't actually know he was like a stand-up comedian. I knew that he had written for Ellen. I knew that he had done some like acting. I knew that he had like a really funny YouTube channel with this canceled news show that he does, which is super hilarious. That's actually how I found out about him. And then, come to find out, he not only does he do stand-up, he has a dry bar special coming out called Not Big Enough to Cancel. So please welcome the very funny, the very talented Adam Yenser. Adam, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I had seen you on Ellen, and I knew about you there, and I actually knew about you way before because I watch your YouTube, your canceled news.
Oh, thanks. You're one of the 6,000 subscribers. I'm slowly growing. I don't have a big channel, but I'm flattered that you watch it. Thank you.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so good. Like I love like weekend updates, stuff like that. So it has that kind of vibe to it. So I really enjoy those things. And
that's the kind of jokes I always love, that style of late night monologue jokes. That's what I grew up with. Those are my favorite.
Yeah. How did you go from just tell us about who you are and how you got into stand-up. We'll start there and then we can go to the other stuff.
Well, yeah. So I'm a writer and stand-up comedian. My entrance into the industry, I started out when I was in college. I was an intern for Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And then I became a segment producer's assistant there, worked there for 6 years, and then got the writing job at Ellen after we moved to Los Angeles. I started doing stand-up in New York when I was working for Conan in around 2007. First time I went up was at a open mic at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in New York. And at the time, Pete Holmes was the open mic host. So my first time ever doing stand-up, Pete Holmes was hosting an open mic back then. From there, I worked at Ellen as a writer for 10 years, got to work on the Oscars as a writer when she hosted, worked on a few other projects with her. And then over the past year, since her show ended, I've been working for the Babylon Bee as a writer there. And started my YouTube canceled news show during the pandemic because stand-up was shut down for a year. So that was kind of a creative outlet for me there.
That's awesome. I also love the Babylon Bee. I get them in my inbox all the time. I have written on a couple like small podcasts where we did like political kind of news, satire news stuff or whatever. So I love those kind of jokes as well. They're like one of my favorite things in the world. And every time I always like, man, they're so good at being ahead of this on the Babylon Bee. It's so good. So I love that you do that. And your stand-up though isn't political. Like I was watching this. It's not super political. You do talk about some things, but And I don't know, your show kind of leans a little right, I guess. I mean, I guess that would be the way. Yeah. Is that hard? Is that hard in Hollywood? Is that like a hard thing to navigate? Do like people come at you for it?
I wouldn't say no one's tried to cancel me yet, so to speak.
Right.
I wouldn't say people come after me for it. They definitely like disagree, but I've always been open about the fact that I personally am very conservative.
Yeah.
I don't see myself as someone who's on the extreme right, but when it comes to voting politics and my social values, I've been conservative as long as I've had political opinions. So by the time I entered into the entertainment industry after college, it was already a very left-leaning industry, but it wasn't as polarized and antagonistic as it is now. So I just was kind of fine being the person in the office who disagreed. And back in those days, no one really had much of a problem. Sure, we'd disagree on politics and have little disagreements and debates here and there, but it wasn't this sort of animosity that you feel now. And so I try to navigate it in a way that I stand up for what I believe in. I'm not afraid to have an opinion that's different than most of the other people in the industry. But I also try not to be, this is both in my personal life and in my comedy, when I do talk about politics, I try to present my view in a way that will make people laugh, even if they disagree.
Right.
And I try to come up, even if I know it's a topic that's going to offend half the audience, like I have conservative views when it comes to the whole debate over transgender ideology and stuff like that. But I try to write the jokes strong enough that you'll laugh, even if you disagree. And I try not to be one of these like edgelord comics that just gets laughs by being as extreme and crass and offensive as possible. and that's kind of been my strategy in navigating both working professionally in Hollywood and in my stand-up act. There's a little bit of that in my dry bar special. And when I do go out to clubs and do shows for general audiences, which are usually mixed politically,
Yeah.
I always start with non-political material, and then I kind of like to reveal that I'm conservative. And I like playing with the fact that half the crowd will be alienated by that. And I enjoy walking that line. I think there's a lot of humor from that tension between I'm going to do this joke, even though I know half of you don't agree with it. And I think if you do that in a smart way, it can be really funny. So that's kind of what I always go for. And it's the same thing with canceled news. I'm very open on there that I'm conservative. I was a Trump supporter. I don't agree with everything he's ever done, but I was, a Trump voter in 2020. And I'm very open about that. But again, I hope I can write the jokes strong enough that people enjoy it, whether or not they're on my side of the political spectrum.
Yeah, I felt like your jokes on there are very like kind of down the middle for a lot of stuff. Even stuff that like you like I could see you easily like giving a pass on somebody for, you still are in the pocket on it. And I'm like, okay, well that makes sense. Like he's being fair. It's not, and as much as I love Weekend Update, I feel like sometimes they give a pass to people a little bit more than they should. I'm like, come on guys, you gotta, if you do everybody, then we all win. Like everybody can win in this whole situation. I love it. Now with doing Not Big Enough to Cancel, I love Dry Bar. They always do a great job. When did you film it? What was that experience like for you? All that kind of stuff.
So I filmed the special actually over a year ago. I filmed it in May of 2021, wow. And they have a theater in Provo, Utah. So Dry Bar is partnered with Angel Studios, a sort of Christian Mormon platform for clean comedy, and they have a lot of Christian content and clean entertainment on there. They were great to work with. They have a great audience there. And they do 2 tapings. It's typical of comedy specials, regardless of what platform it's on. You'll tape 2 in the same night, and they kind of edit together the best takes from both. And it's a mix of material that I've been working on. Some of it's a few years old. Some of it was kind of fresh stuff that I came up with during the pandemic and about, the transition out of that phase of the world. And there's lots of non-topical and non-political material too. So yeah, taped it back in May of 2021. And then, they had a rough pass at the edit a few months later. We went back and forth with notes, and then, finally got released the same week of Thanksgiving this year.
That's awesome. Was there any jokes that they told you couldn't say, or like any topics that they told you couldn't do? Because I have friends who've done Dry Bar. I know what goes on behind the scenes. There's always those jokes where people go, oh man, I can't do that joke. They said I can't do that joke. Did you have that at all?
Yeah. I did have that. It's interesting because I love that you have a clean comedy podcast, because the way I always, I'll get to the joke that they didn't want me to use. I always describe my style as clean but edgy. Right. I don't get super vulgar. I don't get super sexual or graphic, but I do like making jokes that push the audience's comfort levels a little bit. And I try to do it in a clean way. But with a brand like Dry Bar, they want their stuff to be squeaky clean. They have a very specific audience. So for the most part, I'm very happy with the finished product. It's something I run into at the Babylon Bee writing also, because when I go out to do like comedy clubs, or if I've been in comedy festivals, there was one a few years ago, like the San Diego Comedy Festival. Okay. I won Best Clean Comedian at that festival. And when I go out to clubs, I'll have people come up to me afterwards and they'll say, we loved how clean you were. And then when I go to Babylon Bee and make these same jokes, it's like, we can't believe how dirty that is. So it's these two polarized audiences where, one of them, as long as you're not humping the stool, they think it's a clean set. Right. And then this other audience, if you say the word vagina, they think the whole thing is dirty and vulgar and terrible. So the 2 jokes that I love that are part of my set, it's more because the one of them is dark and one of them more like politically controversial. I have there is one joke about me being pro-life that's in the Dry Bar special. And then the one that I usually do after that was cut is I say, it's weird to me that feminists are so pro-abortion. Normally they hate vacuuming.
Wait, they didn't leave that in. That's such a good. That's so good. That's such a good segue. Oh man,
it's one of my favorite. Yeah, so I had to cut that, and then I have another joke. I do a bit about the debate over transgender bathrooms and stuff like that, and then I have a joke that I do kind of after that. I don't want to do it on here because I want to be able to do that joke in sets. But they let me keep in most of that section. There was one tag from that I had to cut at the end though. But I think the special, it works really well. I'm really proud of the finished product.
That's awesome. I am most excited. I know that you're on Ellen. Yes, you wrote for all this stuff. The Babylon Bee, for some reason, to me is like the icing on the cake because I love that stuff. That's like a dream job. And how did that? Can you tell us a story of how that came about or how you got that?
Yeah. Babylon Bee, I had some just little bit of contact with their people here and there. When I started on Canceled News, I had reached out to them to see if it was something they'd be interested in partnering with. And then the year, when was it? Last year, 2021 in the spring, when Kyle Mann and Ethan Nicole were hosting the Babylon Bee podcast at the time, I had some mutual friends that worked at Daily Wire, and they had seen me do stand-up and recommended me to Ethan to come on their weekly podcast at the Babylon Bee. They have different comedian guests on there. I went on there in spring and just sat in on the weekly podcast as the third chair. We had good, comedic chemistry together. Those guys were great to work with. And I was just finishing up my time at Ellen. I left in July of that year. And then in fall, Ethan reached out to me again and said, we really liked working with you. Would you be interested in freelancing with us? Because at that time, they were kind of expanding more into their YouTube content, because everyone knows them for the Onion style news headlines and the satire articles. But we're growing more and more into sketches and podcasts and video content. And with my background, I started out just freelancing for that stuff, and I would also contribute some article headlines. And my role there kind of grew over a few months. And then when Ethan left, he went over to Daily Wire and is working on some of their kids programming stuff there. Then they brought me on full time. So then I started taking over the second chair on the podcast and getting more involved full time in writing sketches with them.
Wow. Where are they based out of? Where's Babylon Bee based out of?
Southern California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know Daily Wire left. I think they were in California. They left, and then a bunch of people left. So that makes sense.
So our creative offices are in Southern California, and then the sort of business side is in Florida.
Okay. That's awesome, man. That's so much fun that you can do it. And I love that you're I don't want to say use the word unapologetic, because I feel like that's kind of an overused word. But a lot of comedians who I know, there are a lot more comedians that are conservative than will admit on stage, will admit out loud, or will even, I don't know if you've had this thing where I've done a joke and then someone has whispered to me afterwards, I really liked your joke. I'm conservative. And I'm like, why are you telling? It's not a secret. We're not, I don't know what you're doing here. It was just a joke. It's not meant to be one way or the other. It's just supposed to be silly or whatever. But then you get that and people whisper to you and you go, okay, for me, it doesn't matter. I have friends with everybody. I don't really care what your political stance is. I'm not even either or of any of that. So it doesn't matter to me. So, but I'm why are you whispering about it? I don't understand. But as I've done comedy longer and longer, I've realized, oh my gosh, it's such a weird thing, especially in LA, where you can't say certain things, or you can't, and I'm that's so weird. I've had jokes where people you can't say that joke, and I'm but why? Or you can't. I do a joke where I compare, I talk about serial killers, and I talk about when white people find them in their neighborhood versus when black people would find them in their neighborhood. And I do a old white lady voice, and I do a black lady voice. And I've had people come and say, you can't do that voice. You can't do that. I was but I'm I've done this in an urban room, and they were dying laughing. Nobody got mad at me. Yeah. Why are you, white lady, getting mad at me? You know what I'm saying?
It's liberal white people are the ones that get the most offended by everything.
So crazy.
And I've had that experience I've had both of those experiences you talked about. I've had comedians come up to me after sets who don't talk about politics at all and say, I'm conservative also. Yeah. And I think a lot of people in the industry, both stand-ups and behind the scenes, as far as writers and stuff in Hollywood go, a lot of them, even if they're not right-leaning, even if they're Democratic voters and more socially liberal, they are starting to feel a pushback against the woke culture that's really trying to censor everything. And I everybody talks about cancel culture. I think it's a very real thing. I do have hope that there are glimmers of light now that people are kind of pushing back against that. Netflix standing by Dave Chappelle, I think was a fantastic move. But there are people in Hollywood that behind the scenes will say, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not for censoring and silencing and pushing this ideology in everything that we do. And then as far as like being open about it on stage, I wish more people would kind of just, not even if they're going to do their whole set. I'm not asking them to be a political comic, but I think it's important for comedians and people behind the scenes in Hollywood and the entertainment industry and the media to be open about this, because the goal of those sort of cancel culture pushers and social justice warriors, it's exactly what they want. Is they want you to be afraid to talk about it. They want you to think, the more you stay silent, the more power it gives them to say, yeah, we're going to intimidate you into not saying what you believe, basically.
Yeah, I just really like the idea. Like what I love about stand-up is that it's supposed to be the highest form of free speech. Like you could say whatever you want, you could talk about whatever you want, and it's it's in this loving, funny, humorous way. So when people get upset at jokes, I'm like, but why? Like, why are you mad? Because I've heard all kinds of jokes. Maybe I don't agree with the idea that they're saying, but I'm like, that's a great joke. Like that was an amazing joke. I don't agree 100% with what they said, but that was well written, well structured, well delivered. Like every part of it was great. I can appreciate it for what it is. And people be like, oh, that guy should never get to say that again, or that girl shouldn't say that. I'm like, who cares? Like, we're here to have fun and laugh. Did you laugh? Oh, I saw you laughing, so you liked it, So it's
and
weird.
I think that's really important right now also, because where I'm very grateful for how I came into the industry. Right. Even working at a somewhat political platform like the Babylon Bee now, like not everything they do is political, but it definitely has a very public conservative bent. I grew up, I had conservative values, but I grew up just loving comedy. So the most important thing to me is always, is it funny first? So if somebody I disagree with makes a great joke, I still find it funny. There are lots of comics that I love. I mean, I don't like Colbert's current incarnation of his show because I think it's gotten too preachy. But when he was doing the Colbert Report, I mean, he was making fun of Republicans. He was doing a Republican character, and it was hilarious. It was one of the funniest things on television, and I loved it. And it was, that show was an influence on my style. It was something that I loved watching. And then I think the flip side of that is, working in the sort of conservative comedy circles. I won't name names here, but there are conservative comedians that people will always say, oh, do you know about this guy? He's right in your lane. He's a conservative comedian. And I'll look him up and I'm like, this guy's not funny at all. I get that you agree with his politics,
right? But
they're just comedically, it's a lot of it's very lacking because they kind of put the politics first and the comedy comes second.
Yeah, I want comedy. Like I love stuff. Like I grew up on Carlin when that was very political and a lot of his stuff. I grew up reading The Onion. Again, a lot of political stuff.
Yeah, The Onion was hilarious. I used to love The Onion. It's weird. I feel like at some point the Babylon Bee kind of eclipsed The Onion.
The Onion, I agree.
But yeah, The Onion was fantastic.
And that wasn't necessarily all the ideas that I agreed upon, but I found it funny. I would laugh and find humor in it, and that's what I love about what this does, what you're doing. That's why I watch your show, The Cancel News. I watch a ton of these kind of shows like that on YouTube and stuff, just because I want to see what everyone's doing and go, oh man, this guy had a better take than they did, and they spent $10,000 to produce that show. This guy's doing it in his living room or his garage or whatever. I don't know where you do it, but in front of a green screen and stuff. Yeah, in front of a green screen. I'm like, and he had a better take than this guy, and I'm like, this is so funny. So, and I also watch Weekend Update. I've seen you do jokes that are similar to what Weekend Update, and I go, man, Adam nailed that one. They had a great one. I laughed at theirs. It was still good, but Adam nailed that one. So it's really funny to watch everybody's stuff and then be like, oh man. And you have a very unique voice. I know that's everyone kind of has their own thing. You wouldn't be able to tell a Jost joke and a Che joke unless it was racially different.
And
Like,
I
it's
love a
their kind
lot
of
of what
jokes.
they do still. You know, a lot of
Oh, I
people,
love theirs.
SNL has always been up and down throughout all its years, and I've always loved the show for what it is. Now, there's definitely like weaker seasons and casts where there's episodes where they say, oh, there's nothing good, and people always want to proclaim the death of SNL and say it's not funny anymore. It always comes back though, and even in the weakest seasons, there's still brilliant sketches on there. I like Colin Jost and Michael Che. I think a lot of their stuff is really good. And as much as it's a more left-leaning show, Che in particular, he does a few jokes that are push the boundaries of people have tried to come for him with the cancel culture stuff a few times over jokes, and he's stood by it. I think a lot of what they do is really funny on there.
Yeah, I think they are only second to Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald doing Weekend Update is probably the best version of Weekend Update.
Yeah.
But for me, they're my second favorite. And because they have such a great banter and such a great way to do it. Now you do the show once a week, right? You do your show. So news once a week.
Yeah, once a week. I take a little break over the holidays or if I'm out of town for comedy, but I try to put one out every week. Usually comes out on Saturday evenings. Yep.
I have a question for you. This is going to be a weird question. I'm going to ask you.
Go for
you
it.
wear the suit. You wear the jacket, the tie. Are you wearing shorts?
I'm usually wearing jeans.
Okay.
If it's in the summer, I'm wearing shorts because it's all off camera.
Yeah.
There might have been a few episodes during the pandemic where I was just wearing underwear. It was that era where you never put on pants because no one ever sees more than this of you. You don't want to wind up with a Jeffrey Toobin situation, but it's
100%.
It's just everybody, you only see what's here and up. Yeah.
I'm always guessing. I'm like, I bet he's wearing shorts this time. Like, I bet it's wearing shorts. Like, I'm trying to guess.
It's usually jeans, but it has been shorts a few times.
Yeah, see, that's funny, and I love it. Like, it's such a good way to do it. Now, how long?
Sorry, I want to ask you this because I was curious about this, and it brought it to mind. Have you heard this thing? And I never do it, but I don't know where it came from. You shouldn't wear shorts when you do stand up.
Yeah, there's a book.
There's this taboo of like, don't wear shorts when you do stand up. So I never do. I don't think I've ever done stand up wearing shorts. And anytime someone does, it's usually at like an open mic or something.
Yes.
People will criticize them just for wearing shorts while they do stand up.
Okay, so I will tell you where I found out about it from. There's a book by a guy named Rob Durham. He was a stand-up, touring stand-up in the 80s and 90s or whatever. He wrote a whole book, and the title of it's called "Don't Wear Shorts on Stage," and it's the stand-up guide to comedy. And so I've interviewed him. He's a great guy.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of tips in there, and that's like number one.
Yeah, I recently read Comic Lives. Have you ever read that one?
No.
By what's her name? Betsy Bournes, I think is her last name. It's called Comic Lives. It's a fantastic book. She was actually, I think, one of Lorne Michaels' assistants at SNL at some point.
Really?
And then she did this whole great dive into the history of the comedy industry in like the 70s and 80s. And when the Comedy Store and the Improv were coming up.
Oh, I love it.
And it goes into the business side, the personal lives of comedians. There's interviews with comedians. It's a really great book. Yeah.
That's funny because I've been listening to. Sorry, everybody who's listening. We're going to talk some nerd stuff right now. I listened to the history of stand up with Wayne Fetterman, and also on the book or whatever, and the podcast. I'm trying to get him on this podcast because like he really that's what I love is like history of stand up and nerd stuff.
There's some fantastic books out there and podcasts and interviews about it.
So if you guys, and I shouldn't promote other podcasts, but if you've never listened to the history of stand up by Wayne Fetterman, it's fantastic. It's 2 seasons. They're supposed to bring it back. So I love it. And I read the book. I found the book before I even knew there was a podcast. I started reading the book, and he teaches at UCLA. I'm not smart enough to get into UCLA. Otherwise I would go take one of his classes. Like I want to take his class, but they'd be like, get off campus right now, idiot. That's awesome. How long does it take you? Because they're about 5 minutes. Each of your episodes are about 5 minutes. How long does it take you to write all that material for that?
It's hard for me to quantify how much actual time sitting down writing. I usually on a Sunday or Monday go through the news stories and write setups for all of them. Then I go through it 3 or 4 times throughout the week. And each day when there's new news stories, I'll add some new prompts. And then, so it's usually 3 or 4 days I'm working on it before the taping. But I don't know exactly how much time I would say. And now that I'm writing for Babylon Bee also and touring for stand up, it just feels like I'm always constantly trying to think of ideas for one thing or the other.
That's awesome. I used to do a little thing called You Already Know. So it was like it was a news thing where it was like news stories you've already heard of. They probably came out last week, but I write them and then I do like a weekend update and pop up like a little picture of something or whatever and stuff. It was okay. It just helped me so I could get my writing chops on those kinds of, because they're hard. If you don't know how to write those kind of topical jokes, they can be very difficult to learn.
And it is just a great writing exercise for comedians, whether you're doing it for a show like that or not. It's, that's how SNL works also. I've never written for SNL full time, but I used to freelance for them for Weekend Update. I don't know if they still do the freelance thing, but for a few years under Seth Meyers and under when the first couple of years Colin Jost and Michael Che were there, they'd email setups out to freelancers, and then you would pitch jokes, and if they used one, you got like $100 or something. Awesome. And I did that for a few years. I got a few jokes on the air too. It was mostly just the thrill of hearing your joke on Weekend Update. Yeah, but it's the same process. That's why I would recommend if comics are looking for a way to improve their writing or just get some practice in, if you go through the day's news stories and just try to write like a late night style or Weekend Update style monologue joke form, it's great practice. It gets your mind working in the right way.
Yeah, and I had Joe Toplin on here who used to work on late night TV and stuff, and he talked about that too. And his book is fantastic as well. He's like really helped me start with those things as well.
Yeah.
Now, Dry Bar coming out, has that helped your stand up? Has it helped you get booked a lot more? Do you see a lot more people reaching out to you to tour and do things?
I've only got a few people reaching out so far, but it's been out for like a week. So for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. It just came out the day after Thanksgiving. And I have my shows booked pretty much through the end of this year, and I've just started trying to book early next year. But yeah, I've always heard Dry Bar is it's a really good platform to get more club bookings, especially the Midwest clubs. Their audiences, there's a lot of overlap with those audiences and the Dry Bar audience.
Yeah. Anything kind of middle America outside like New York and like LA type stuff.
Yeah.
You can get a lot more bookings off of Dry Bar. I know plenty of people who just tour off of that or even do cruise ships or whatever just because of that thing.
And it's interesting, they addressed this a little bit in that Comic Lives book I was recommending. It's something I think I learned later on in comedy is it's the whole comic industry it's very tight knit in that we all kind of know each other, especially once you start touring, you kind of get to know people in different markets. But the markets for what you see on late night TV on the coasts is different than the road dog comics in the Midwest. There's people that can sell out every club in the Midwest and you've never heard of them, but they're headlining, 50 out of 52 weeks a year, and they're killing it every time. But their style is not exactly what would fly on a late night comedy show. And then there's people who are doing these really cerebral, brilliant jokes on late night comedy shows. And you go to the Midwest and the audience is just like, what's this? We just want to hear about, your marriage jokes and stuff like that.
No, I get it. Like in LA where a lot of stuff, sometimes it kind of gets mixed reviews. I did Texas with Darren Carter. Jokes killed there. I did Alaska, right? Only one joke failed there. It was a joke about being eaten by bears. Apparently that's a touchy subject there.
Yeah.
So
they all know someone who has.
Yeah. But I had no clue. You would think like I would have a clue doing that joke before I did it, but the rest of it was
hard
fine.
to make a call like that sometimes because you think these people either are gonna relate to this joke more than anyone,
right?
Or they're gonna hate it, and it's a gamble. You kind of, as a comic, it's like you always want to go for it. Yeah. But you never know. You're always like, well, this could go either way. But
I was in there thinking like, this is going to be the joke.
Gamble. Yeah.
I was like, this is the one. This is my crowd. This is the crowd that's going to love this joke.
Yeah.
Nope, not at all. I was like, oh, I remember being like, oh my gosh. So
yeah.
Have you? Where's your favorite place to tour or do shows at? Like, what's your favorite, maybe state or city or whatever?
It's hard to pick favorites because there's so many clubs that I love. I really do love the Looney Bins in the Midwest. There, the Oklahoma City one I loved. I think that one just closed, but they have one in Tulsa, Wichita, and Little Rock. Those clubs are great. In LA, I don't get up there often, but I love the Laugh Factory. Of all the major clubs, that room is my favorite. I like all of them, but that one's really great. There's a few clubs that I did for the first time this summer that I absolutely love. There's Comedy Cabana in Myrtle Beach was a ton of fun, and then McCurdy's in Sarasota, Florida was just I did shows with Rob Little there, and it was just the crowds were fun. The staff was great. They did like Thursday to Sunday. Every show was packed. They were so much fun. Great audiences there. I really liked that one a lot.
You know what's funny is I hear from a lot of people that Florida is like one of the best places to
Yeah.
like perform comedy. Like people love that.
And
But
I know
then it's
comics
like,
on both sides of the political spectrum
yeah,
that love Florida crowds. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I was about to say. Is like I know some who are like both sides who go Florida is the best, man. Like they just love everything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
really, Florida? Like okay, like all right. I mean, I've been to Florida. I love Florida. Florida people are
Uh-huh.
awesome. Chris Cope, who's one of my like favorite people in the
Oh
world, is
yeah.
a Florida guy, and like
Uh-huh.
he's the embodiment of Florida. Like you know, so
Yeah.
it's like it's always great. So that's good for that to exist,
Yeah.
I guess. Now, do you have anything else? You're going to be producing an album or anything like else like that anytime soon?
I don't know that I'll be doing that anytime soon. It's definitely something I would like to do at some point. Now that I've kind of released this dry bar special, it's like 25 minutes, I think. But it ate up a big chunk of material that I'd been doing for a while. So right now I'm gonna be I have a bunch of shows booked, and then I'll also be hitting open mics. I kind of want to build up a new half hour to hour of material over this coming year. So I'll be going heavily into working on new stuff. We have just different projects in the works at the Babylon Bee that will hopefully come to fruition in the coming year. And yeah, mostly just doing live shows. One of the great things about the schedule at the Babylon Bee is I can work remotely often for part of the week, so it's really freed me up to go on the road a lot more. And I've never wanted to be a comic that's on the road all year long,
Right.
but I do love going, every 2 weeks or for a couple months at a time, just touring around the country. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I'll be doing a lot more of that this coming year.
You're living the dream. Now, one more thing. I don't know if anyone suggests this to you. Have you thought about taking canceled news and just taking out the audio portion and putting it up as a podcast so it goes out to more people that way as well?
I haven't thought of that. I shouldn't say I haven't thought of it. The reason I haven't done it is I do think every now and then there's jokes that the graphic or the image kind of adds to the joke. Now, that doesn't always, mean you shouldn't do that. Like they run on Comedy Central Sirius channel, they'll run the Daily Show, and they'll run, comedy specials where you kind of need a visual element to it because it's usually a joke or two here or there. No, so I haven't done an audio version of it only, but I would consider it. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it, but yeah.
I think you should. I think it would be awesome because then you could just get more stuff out of it, and it's already so good. It's like so. Sorry guys that I'm like all of us, but like it's so well produced. It's the thing that I wanted to do with you already know that I just couldn't get to, and like I'm like, man, this is amazing. So I'm.
Thanks, James. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So I appreciate it. Now, where can people find you? Where can they look up more of your stuff? All the stuff. Let's promote everything we can.
So yeah, to check out the canceled news, just look up my name on YouTube. It's my channel, Adam Yenser. You can go to adamyenser.com to see my upcoming tour dates. You can check out babylonb.com and the Babylon Bee YouTube channel to catch their stuff. I've written a lot of the sketches, and on their podcast channel, I co-host the podcast. And then if you do want to check out my dry bar special, go to drybarcomedy.com and you can get a month free subscription if you use my name, Adam Yenser, as the promo code. And then just a few upcoming shows. I don't know when this podcast will go live. On December 16th and 17th, I'll be at Crackpots in Massillon, Ohio. I'm doing a holiday show at Seven Sirens Brewing in Easton, Pennsylvania. Doing a New Year's Eve show in Veterans Hall in Morro Bay, California.
Nice.
So that's what I got coming up. And I do Gutfeld on Fox News every now and then. I'll probably be on Gutfeld again at some point over the holidays as well.
Oh yeah, his little roundtable stuff is always so fun.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I always have a fun time when I'm there.
Where's that filmed at?
New York.
Okay. Oh wow,
Yeah.
dang. So you have to go all the way to the other coast. Wow, that's awesome.
Well, I'm from Pennsylvania originally, so I always go back there over the holidays. So it's about 2 hours. Yeah.
All right. So Steelers or Eagles fan?
See, I'm a college football guy. So Penn State is my team. They made it to the Rose Bowl, so I already got Rose Bowl tickets. Nice. My family is Eagles fans. So, when the Eagles are doing well, I'm a fair weather fan. So.
Oh, no, I have a custom Eagles jersey. I growing up in Texas, I got beat up for being an Eagles fan, but I have a custom Eagles jersey with my name on it and my number when I played football on it. So,
nice. That's awesome.
So I'm a big Eagles fan. So when I meet someone from Pennsylvania, I'm like, oh, wait, which one is it? Because you're in one camp or the other. There's not really a middle ground there. So it's pretty awesome. Well, thank you again, Adam. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to put all the links for everything for Adam on there, including his little promo code for Dry Bar and stuff in there, so you guys can watch it. It's fantastic. If you just watch the trailer, you're going to be like, oh, I got to watch this right now. So you're going to love it. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please like, subscribe. Go to Adam's thing, subscribe as well, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.